Zelenskyy harshly criticized Trump after the attack on Sumy. I think it's just a horror. How can you see our losses, our suffering, understand what the Russians are doing, and yet think that they are not the aggressors? The U.S. presidential advisor advocated the immediate transfer of weapons to Kyiv. I was wrong. Supporting Ukraine is America first. Putin is pure evil. The Kremlin continues to make fun of the White House. What's the truth? How are our relations developing? All is going well. That's what we'll talk about. But first, please like and subscribe to this channel, because we have something really interesting here. Let's go. Any reaction to Russia's attack on Palm Sunday? I think it was terrible. I was told it was a mistake, but I think it's disgusting. This whole war is a horror. The fact that it started at all is an abuse of power. The war would never have happened if I were president. It's a disgrace. Millions died when they should have been alive. Ukrainian cities are destroyed, all culture is disappearing, or at least seriously damaged. Just think, chapels, churches, spires, everything in Ukraine was among the most beautiful in the world. And now most of them are destroyed, blown to pieces. Yesterday morning, Putin's forces struck 2 ballistic missiles in the center of the city of Sumy. This resulted in the deaths of 34 people, including 2 children. At least 117 people, including 15 children, injured. This all happened right after Putin met with Trump's representative Witkoff in St. Petersburg. And he talked to him for 4.5 hours about the fact that Russia seems to want peace, wants to stop the war against Ukraine. So they talked. Putin again told Witkoff the mantra about Ruriks and that they are ready for peace. Witkoff said goodbye, went happily to report all this to Washington. And Putin immediately hit the city center, right on Palm Sunday. He did it just in the morning, so there'd be more victims. And what logically Trump should have done if he was such a normal and strong leader. Obviously, to say, Putin, I can see how you want peace. The attack on Sumy and the recent attack on Kryvyi Rih showed me everything. I will impose a serious package of sanctions against Russia and huge tariffs on the energy resources that you sell. And of course, I will destroy your shadow fleet so that your economy will be screwed. But instead of all that, Trump has once again shown everyone that he is a punchinello. First, the U.S. president went to his golf club, where he unveiled a monument to himself. And closer to the evening, he responded to the attack on Sumy, saying, as we actually heard, that it was supposedly a mistake. Even though he didn't even have the courage to call a spade a spade. He couldn't say Russia did it. He couldn't say Putin did it all. For Trump, it seems, things are not so clear now, and this position does not speak about strength. Such a position speaks of weakness, a weakness that Moscow is exploiting. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, seeing what Trump's head is now saying, harshly criticized such rhetoric from the U.S. president and stressed in an interview with the American television channel CBS that Trump should come to Ukraine and see with his own eyes what Putin is doing. I believe that, unfortunately, Russian narratives are winning in the United States in terms of information. All I have to do is work, serve, talk more, do everything I can to keep the Russian narrative from completely taking over American politics. I think it's just a horror. How can you see our losses, suffering, what the Russians are doing, and yet believe they are not the aggressors, not the ones who started the war? This shows the great influence of Russia's information policy on America, on the politics of the U.S., on the politicians of the U.S. The great influence of Russia's information policy on America, on the politics of the U.S., on the politicians of the U.S. Zelenskyy said it's disgrace that the White House listens to Putin's narrative on the war in Ukraine. It was an hour-long interview where many interesting things were said. For example, about why the policy that Trump is pursuing is a failure. Also, Zelenskyy said it so well that even if Trump wants to do some business with Putin in the future, it will be business, in fact, with a murderer. Business on blood. Well, guess what? After this interview came out, Trump said that the American TV channel CBS News should lose its license and be fined because of their so-called dishonest and fraudulent reporting. The American president wrote this on his True Social network. The U.S. President Donald Trump said that the American TV channel CBS News should lose its license and be fined because of their so-called dishonest and fraudulent reporting. He accused CBS News 60 Minutes, which Trump says smears him nearly every week and uses the last name Trump in a derogatory manner. Trump also took umbrage at two stories in particular that came out this weekend. They are not a news show, but dishonest political agents who are just masquerading as news and should be held accountable for what they have done and are doing. They should lose their license, Trump wrote. The U.S. president also expressed hope that the Federal Communications Commission will impose maximum fines and penalties on CBS for illegal behavior as the TV channel has gone out of control at unprecedented levels. I'm wildly sorry, but what kind of freedom of speech, freedom of the media, democracy does Trump talk about in his speeches? If you are criticized deservedly, be kind enough to take the hit. If you are busy unveiling your monuments, playing golf there, instead of keeping your promises, be responsible for all of this. Moreover, the host of this show who interviewed Zelenskyy is Scott Pelley, an American journalist who has been to Ukraine many times and seen everything with his own eyes, saw what Putin is doing here. How many times has Trump been to Ukraine? Correct. 0. Maybe he walked around on Google Maps or watched Instagram stories like his Vice President Vance. So, what I mean is that in order to solve any issues about Ukraine, you first need to come to Ukraine and see what is really happening here. Talk to real people. Then the rhetoric and actions will change dramatically. A striking example of this is Trump's spiritual advisor Mark Burns, who a month ago said that Ukraine should stop being given weapons, that Kyiv is stealing money there, and so on and so forth. And then he personally came to Ukraine, traveled around the cities, and realized that he was wrong. And now he publicly admits this, says that he was fooled by fake news in the U.S., asks for forgiveness, advocates for the immediate transfer of weapons to Kyiv, and calls Putin pure evil. Last month, you supported President Trump's decision to suspend military aid to Ukraine. This week, you are already calling for more tanks, fighters, and weapons for Ukraine. What changed during the time? Obviously, my stay in Ukraine has greatly influenced my opinion. I continued supporting Ukraine in previous statements, posts, interviews, but I had to be in Kiev to visit Bucha, to see with my own eyes the atrocities that took place there. When you hear about the atrocities, you see the white bandages on civilians' hands. They wore them to signify they're not soldiers, so that the Russian military wouldn't touch them. But these same soldiers used bandages to shoot people mercilessly. This changed my perception forever. I now believe that supporting Ukraine is America first. And I appeal to all Republicans, to all conservatives, to all Americans, and to all people around the world who, like me, have been fooled by the fake media about Ukraine. For example, fake news claimed that Ukraine allegedly hates churches and destroys missionary organizations, but this is a blatant lie. With all the lies coming from the mainstream media, it's easy to form the opinion that Ukraine is allegedly receiving billions of dollars, and there are no results. And you start to wonder where the money went. But when you're on the ground, talking to people, and seeing the horrors that Russians are committing, politics fades into the background. You stop thinking about whether Trump supports Zelenskyy, whether Zelenskyy was disrespectful in the Oval Office, and ignore the fake claim that Trump allegedly sold Ukraine to Russia. It all stops mattering. You just see children killed. Just a few days ago, 9 children were killed. More innocent lives destroyed by the Russians. And when you see all this, politics goes away. My heart, as a person of faith, can't take it. From that moment on, I kept saying, I was wrong. And you know, the cross teaches me that you need to be able to admit your mistakes, have a humble heart, and say, I was wrong. Nobody paid me for the trip to Ukraine. I bought the tickets myself. Nobody invited me hoping I would convey someone's position. No, not at all. It's just people. People being destroyed. So I've become an ardent supporter of Ukraine and continue to tell that at all government levels in the US and around the world. We must take the side of Ukraine. Russia is the aggressor. When you see Russian atrocities with your own eyes, it's just pure evil. This is the right approach. Respect for this person despite his background. It's good, by the way, that he came. After all, Burns has access to Trump's body since they've been friends for many years. Maybe he'll teach his red-headed buddy a thing or two. Seriously, Putin is demonstratively and bloodily shelling civilians in Ukraine precisely after he talks to the US and promises them that he will cease fire. Isn't it a mockery of the White House, the US President administration? I don't think the US, and when I say the US, I mean the US, not just the Trump team, would want them to be a laughingstock in the eyes of a creature like Putin and in the eyes of the world. Just listen to these crazy characters in Russia talk about why they killed over 30 people in Sumy last Sunday. Just people who were out there riding the trolley, walking with their families downtown. They say they saw the UAF somewhere there. I don't know where. Russia is baffling to the mind. When I was preparing for the broadcast, of course, I couldn't help but watch the information coming from Sumy. It is interesting that Deutsche Welle immediately blames us. I hit the city center, a large number of casualties. And if you read Deutsche Welle, you get the feeling that traditional German propaganda, naturally, together with British propaganda, is trying to create another Bucha, as traditional. I'll repeat this word once again, because during this war we see this constantly, attempt by the Ukrainian authorities to disrupt the possibility of any agreements. When Putin has a 4.5-hour conversation with Donald Trump's representative, something happens immediately. And at the same time, every time I have to somehow evoke in myself, look for some emotions in order to experience a feeling of compassion for civilians. And then I catch myself thinking about what I saw in Kursk province, about what those bastards were doing there, about the happy pig squealing that came from the Ukraine, how they enjoyed it when people died, when our children were dying, how they enjoyed the fact that the Colorado larvae were burning and dying. We're not like them. Maybe after listening to this, Trump decided it was just a silly mistake, and that's it. My advice, Donald Fredovich, is to watch Russia 1 less and listen less to the Kremlin, because while they cynically violate any ceasefire, intensify shelling of Ukraine, Peskov is there saying that Kiev is terrorists, that it is impossible to come to an agreement with Ukraine, and they and their American friends and partners are doing well. Some extremely contradictory signals come from the American side. Sometimes we hear that we're unhappy with how Russia is delaying the Ukrainian settlement. Sometimes everything seems to be going very well in relations between Russia and the US. What's the truth? How are our relations now? In fact, everything is going very well. The thing is that reviving relations practically from scratch is a very difficult matter. It requires very intense diplomatic and other efforts. And the whole path consists of small steps to recreate an atmosphere of at least minimal mutual trust, to strengthen this mutual trust. That's what's being done now. Contacts are being made through the special services, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the State Department. There are many nuances with the resumption of normal activities of our diplomatic missions. In addition, we see a very active exchange of visits by special representatives, which has become almost regular. Both our Representative Dmitriev and the American Representative Witkoff exchange such shuttle visits. This is a very good, reliable channel for communicating positions to each other. Presidents listen to these messages that are thus transmitted and are able to judge the reality of the situation and the actual approach. The Kyiv regime is not doing very well with Washington. We see that such disgusting behavior of the Kyiv regime representatives doesn't exactly appeal to the current Trump administration. Also, more countries, including in Europe, pay attention to the largely false position of the Kyiv regime on a whole range of issues. The issues on which the adjustment set depends. The temporary moratorium on striking energy infrastructure facilities alone says a lot. Either the Kyiv regime does not want to observe this moratorium, or it can't keep part of its military under control. What is this, if not public mockery? American viewers, please don't be silent. We're very grateful for your support of Ukraine and Ukrainians. We have the same values. Therefore, I ask you to send fragments of this issue, especially with Peskov and Solovyov, to the White House email. A strong America can be with a truly strong leader. And I want to believe that the President of the United States will finally have some balls. I see. There is a problem with this in the country. Maybe this character has a couple of them lying around and he will start to act, not just play golf and talk some nonsense. I'll end this here, friends. Thanks for watching. See you again.